You think I'm afraid of darkness, of secrets? She said, her voice rising slightly, breaking through the stillness. I've lived in darkness, Yadiel. I've worn its mask. Your secrets don't scare me. They make you human. Human? He scoffed, but the mirth in his voice was hollow. This world doesn't care for humanity, Beatrix. It craves power. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering across his features like lightning. And you have more power than you know, yet you're wasting it hiding. Her voice softened, and for a heartbeat, his stormy expression cracked, revealing the vulnerability beneath. She could see it, his heart laid bare, a man teetering on the edge of his own fears. What lies beneath all that bravado? He took another step forward, the scent of cedar mingling with the mist in the air. You don't know what you're asking for, he warned, but the timbre had shifted, almost pleading. The night seemed to pulse around them, awash in the whirl of their swirling emotions. Then help me understand, Beatrix pressed, her eyes locking onto his, unwavering. All these shadows, you don't have to fight them alone. A long silence stretched between them, the unspoken words hanging heavily. The world outside faded, the cacophony of the bustling city mere echoes lost in the night. Yadiel's heart raced, memories clawed at him, moments of pain, loss, the looming specter of impending doom. 6 months, he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, words trembling on the brink of revelation. That's all I have left, if I'm dragged into daylight. The admission struck Beatrix like a stray bullet. She stepped closer, desperation clouding her eyes. No, you're not allowed to give in to shadows that aren't yours to bear. Caught in their charged exchange, Yadiel hesitated, then reached for her hand, the warmth of her skin igniting a spark between them. They both inhaled sharply, the ambition, the needs, the raw energy swirling like a tempest. You don't understand. Maybe I don't, she challenged, interrupting him, but I refuse to let you bury yourself in the dark. Time seemed to ebb as their gazes held steady, the world around them soaking up the silence that enveloped them. The connection burgeoned like wildfire, lighting up the shadows that had long kept them apart. With a sudden move, he pulled her closer, their breaths mingling as he traced her jawline with a feather-light touch, almost reverentially. What if I'm afraid? He murmured, searching her eyes for a glint of support. Her lips curled into a defiant smile, a spark igniting the dim lights of the night. Afraid of what? Of feeling more than you ought to? You're not the only one with secrets, Yadiel. We can fight them together. And as he leaned in, the world around them collapsed into that single moment. Their lips brushed together, soft and hesitant, as if testing the waters of an uncharted ocean. Time stretched, resonating with the cadence of their hearts, the warmth of connection wrapping around them like a promise. The kiss deepened, the two entwined in a rhythm that melded their fears and hopes, the shadows of their pasts finally beginning to dissipate, shifted by the power of their embrace. Breaking away slightly, Yadiel whispered, "Together? Always," Beatrix replied, her breath mingling with his. And in that simple vow, the chaos of their worlds faded, leaving only the undeniable truth of their bond shimmering in the night air. Scene 86, Gone with the Wind. Yadiel Sinclair stood at the grand window of his opulent office, turbulent clouds swirling against the sunset, a vivid canvas painted with hues of orange and violet. He stared out, fingers tracing the cool glass, lost amidst the chaos of his thoughts. Outside, the city was a muted symphony of honking carriages and distant laughter, echoes of a world seemingly unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. "Yadiel, come help me with this," Beatrix Caldwell called from the cluttered corner of the room, her voice laced with mock exasperation. Piles of papers, books, and mismatched fabrics surrounded her as she sat cross-legged on the floor, sewing needle dangling precariously between her fingertips. Today, she donned a simple white shirt, the faintest tint of her collar stained with grease. Her hair was pulled back into a hasty bun, wisps escaping to frame her face. He turned, amused despite himself, and crossed the polished wooden floor towards her, the scent of sandalwood filling the air. "Is that a dress or an abstract expression of chaos?" he teased, a smirk playing on his lips. Beatrix pursed her lips in a valiant attempt to restrain a smile. "Chaos can be art when it originates from brilliance, my dear Yadiel." She tossed a fabric swatch his way, and it landed on his shoulder, more playful than your usual somber presence. Yadiel chuckled, but the laughter died in his throat, the laughter of her eyes somehow piercing into his guarded core. He knelt beside her, maintaining a palpable distance, but she inched closer, her warmth radiating, disarming his somber demeanor. I swear, if you're telling me I need brighter colors to match the daylight, I might be compelled to shove this needle up my own nose, she quipped, her voice accentuating playful disdain. He leaned in slightly, their shoulders brushing, the proximity rendering the air electric. With your all-black wardrobe, it's either you're a grieving widow or a fashion statement of otherworldly beings. Beatrix rolled her eyes dramatically, the corners of her mouth betraying her amusement, or perhaps simply an artisan unaware of the dancing colors of life. There was a brief silence, one threaded with the tension of their realities. Yadiel's facade slipped for a mere moment, shadows coiling in his hazel eyes. She felt it, the ripples of something vulnerable. Taking the needle from her hand, he deftly wove it through the fabric, his long, skilled fingers moving with surprising gentleness. "You're very good at that," Beatrix observed, her brow furrowing as she watched him transform a torn edge into neat stitches. There lay the contrast of power and tenderness within him, both alluring and alarming. "It's just practical knowledge. Not all of us inherited the gift of charm," he replied, his voice low but rich, a hint of defiance undercutting his admission. "Every life skill has its value, Beatrix, including yours." She met his gaze, the chemistry between them shifting, becoming a simmering tension that was undeniable. "Sometimes, Yadiel, I wonder if we're bound by the stories we tell ourselves more than by the truths we live, the secrets we carry, even when they weigh us down." Yadiel's fingers faltered, the needle slipping from his grasp and landing with a soft thud against the floor. "And what will the world say about your secret?" he asked softly, the weight of his own hidden truths tangling in their air. "They'll say I'm a fool, an ambitious woman pretending to move in a man's world," Beatrix replied, her features hardening slightly, but the vulnerability remained, shimmering just beneath. A moment spun out before them, fraught with unspoken connections. Regardless of the weight of his dark secret, of the clock ticking down the minutes, he leaned closer, his voice a rough whisper. "Then let them think we are foolish, but at least together we are." As he crossed the fragile chasm filled with apprehension, the air shifted. Their lips brushed gently, an electric pulse igniting at the contact. It was a simple kiss, sweet yet fierce, expressing more than words ever could. When they pulled apart, breathless, eyes locked, the noise of the outside world faded into silence. "Together," Beatrix echoed, the word a promise that hung between them like a delicate thread, fragile yet unyielding against the upheavals looming on the horizon. The thunder outside roared, and they broke away, instantly reminded of the chaos that awaited, love constrained by the binds of secret lives and precarious loyalties. Uncertainty loomed larger now than the storm, yet in that moment they found hope, their bond flickering, illuminated by honesty amidst the deception. Scene 87, The Calm Before the Storm. The dimly lit library of Sinclair Manor exuded an air of muted opulence, the kind that told stories just as rich as the rare books that lined the shelves. Heavy velvet drapes fell against the soundless wooden floors, their deep crimson hue almost echoing the tension coiling in the air. A warm fire crackled in the ornate hearth, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls, making the dust motes swirl like forgotten dreams yearning to be freed. At the heavy mahogany table, Beatrix Caldwell leaned over a map spread wide before her, the intricate paths and intersections drawn in a firm but graceful hand. Each line was carefully marked, echoing the meticulous nature of her mind. The faint scent of sandalwood from burning incense wrapped around her like a comforting quilt, though it couldn't quite soothe the flickers of anxiety racing in her chest. Outside, the storm clouds gathered ominously, the distant rumble of thunder rumbling like cautionary whispers, heralding the chaos to come. Beatrix traced a finger along one road, her brow furrowing as she contemplated the choices laid before them. "If we take the West Bridge, we can catch them off guard, but it's a risk," she murmured. Yadiel Sinclair stood at the library's large bay window, his tall frame silhouetted against the gathering storm. The tension radiating from him could nearly fill the room, twisting like smoke in the cool air. He turned slightly, his voice low and steady, despite the storm brewing both outside and within. You underestimate their resources, Beatrix. They own every exit we could use. We need something bolder. If bolder means reckless, it's not an option. Beatrix shot back, her eyes narrowing. We can't storm in like a band of rogues. We need precision, subtlety. But what if subtlety fails? Yadiel stepped closer, his presence commanding yet strangely intimate, igniting a spark that both terrified and thrilled her. This is not just a game of chess. We're dealing with pieces that are not afraid to sacrifice. The tension thickened as they locked gazes, the electric connection momentarily drowning out the storm's growl. Beatrix's heart raced, her pulse in sync with the chaos swirling just beyond the window. And what if you lose yourself in your plans, Yadiel? Sometimes it feels like you're preparing to battle ghosts, she whispered, her words softer now, but laced with urgency. He stepped closer, their proximity amplifying the charged air between them. Ghosts can be very real. A shadow crossed his face, momentarily revealing the weight he bore, the secret that clung to him like a festering wound. But I'm no specter. I'm alive, and I intend to stay that way. The weight of those words lingered like fine china teetering on the edge of a table, poised to shatter. Beatrix felt a wave of unexpected vulnerability tug at her resolve. You want to protect what's yours, she said, her voice now tremulous. But at what cost? Sometimes the cost is too great. He gazed out the window again, the outlines of trees swaying violently in the wind. But love demands sacrifice. A visceral quiet filled the space, a heartbeat shared without words. She could feel her own breath hitch, the world beyond fading into a soft blur. And what if that love is forbidden? Beatrix's voice barely broke the hush, laden with an intensity she desperately wished to temper but could not. Yadiel turned, the flames from the hearth illuminating his face, softening the creases of worry and authority. Then we forge our own path, he declared, stepping nearer, the warmth of his presence enveloping her. But only if you're willing to walk it with me. It was dangerous, that thread of intimacy, that wild invitation. Yet there was a spark in her chest, a flicker of resolve. I've walked many paths, Yadiel. Not all of them have led me to safety. Safety is an illusion. His voice was rich and enveloping, making her heart race with both fear and longing. Let's not talk about safety. Let's talk about what comes after. The air crackled with unspoken promises as Beatrix's breath caught in her throat. Outside, the first droplets of rain began to pelt the window pane, a prelude of the storm about to unleash, both in the world and within their hearts. Are you ready? She finally asked, her voice firm, the storm starting in more ways than one. Only if you are, he replied, his gaze unwavering, dripping with a potent mix of challenge and affection, a promise dangling just out of reach. Scene 88. Whispers in the breeze. The evening air was thick with an unsettling stillness, the brilliance of the dying sun casting elongated shadows across the cobblestone courtyard behind Yadiel Sinclair's estate. Clusters of blossoms drooped in the waning light, their fragrance mingling with the crispness of impending rain. Beatrix Caldwell stood silently at the edge of the terrace, her heart thrumming in her chest as she fought against the ghost of anxiety swirling around her. She instinctively clenched her fists, gripping the ornate wrought iron railing until her knuckles turned pale. Yadiel's heavy footsteps echoed from inside, each one accompanied by the weight of an unspoken reality. Each step was a reminder of what was brewing beneath the gilded surface of their lives, an ominous message lurking like a predator in the grass. Beatrix, Yadiel's voice rang out, breaking the silence, full of dark intent and simmering urgency. He stepped onto the terrace, his presence profound as he leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his brow furrowed, eyes shadowed by the fading light, betraying hints of vulnerability clashing against his otherwise composed demeanor. Did you receive the note? Her throat tightened, though she managed to meet his gaze, steady yet searching. I did, she replied, each word measured, glancing sideways at the tangle of hedges. It's not just a threat, Yadiel, it's a warning. A warning, he echoed, a sardonic edge creeping into his voice, or a miscalculation by a rival who thinks they know us? His posture transformed as he pushed away from the frame, striding towards her like a lion stalking the savannah. Powerful and poised, the tension between them crackled like summer lightning. She inhaled sharply, feeling the electricity in the air. It wasn't just an acknowledgement of the danger ahead, but also of the magnetic pull that connected them. "Your world is already too chaotic," Beatrix said, quietly defiant. "How do you expect me to just stand by while you confront this threat? We can't afford to act rashly." "Rash," he scoffed lightly, though his jaw tightened. "I'm playing a game here, and every second wasted puts you at risk. You think I'd let anything happen to you?" His gaze lingered on her, searching for something deeper as it softened momentarily, vulnerability breaking through his bravado. For a brief moment, the chaos was stripped away, revealing the raw essence coursing between them. Beatrix hesitated, moving closer, the distance shrinking beneath the weight of their shared tension. "You don't understand," she began, but her voice faltered as she found herself lost in his eyes. The air thickened, the world around them fading into a hushed blur. Yadiel seemed to sense the change too. They were no longer merely discussing strategies. The atmosphere was imbued with an intoxicating fervor. Without another thought, he reached for her, fingers brushing against her arm, sending an electric current through her skin. Her breath hitched. "Beatrix," he murmured, inching closer, every word pregnant with all that had remained unsaid between them. "Yadiel," she breathed, caught between the realization of their precarious positions and the intoxicating pull of their connection. His face hovered inches from hers, the dusky glow of twilight framing their entangled silhouettes in a painting of desire and desperation. In that breath, as the evening stars began to scatter themselves across the sky, he closed the remaining space. His lips captured hers in a heated embrace, bold yet tender, igniting every nerve in her body. The kiss swelled, a dance of longing and fierce protection, as if their souls were whispering in ancient language only they could understand. But then the moment fractured. A sudden crash shattered the tranquil backdrop, echoing through the estate, the sound rippling fear through the air like newly drawn steel. They pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, the urgency of their reality crashing in all around them once more. "We need to decide," Yadiel said, his voice low, impressive even in its tension. "Head-on or strategic retreat. Our enemies won't wait on our whims." Beatrix stepped back, processing both the chaos around them and the precarious closeness that had blossomed just moments before. Her resolve set. "Then let's make our choice count," she said, a fierceness igniting within her, conscious that love was not a shelter from storm, but perhaps the compass they needed to navigate it. Scene 89, Tides of Change. The grand chandelier sparkled like diamonds, casting prisms of light across the lavishly decorated ballroom. The air bristled with laughter and clinks of crystal glasses, blending with the scents of rich, spiced meats and sweet pastries. Amid the laughter, Beatrix Caldwell stood by a tall window, her heart racing as she adjusted the cuffs of her finely tailored suit, a risky disguise for a woman meant to blend in with well-to-do gentlemen. "Do you see it?" she asked, glancing sideways at Yadiel Sinclair, whose sharp gaze was fixed on a distant corner of the room, where a group of men eyed them with suspicion. "This charade isn't going to last forever." Yadiel turned slowly, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards, masking something darker beneath. "What are you so afraid of, Beatrix? Being found out, or losing this game we're playing?" His voice was low, a drawl that commanded attention. Beatrix bristled at the challenge, her defiance igniting. "What I fear is your arrogance, Yadiel. You think you can sway everyone with that charming facade of yours. But I see how you underestimate the danger we're in." She held his gaze, every word dripping with urgency. His expression hardened for a moment, but as he stepped closer, that intensity morphed into an unexpected softness. "And do you think you can dance in this world without getting your feet stepped on? You're not just a pawn, Beatrix. You're more valuable than you realize." He brushed a few loose strands of hair behind her ear, an intimate action that made her catch her breath. Footsteps echoed behind them, and they pivoted, faces pulled into a mask of congenial ease. Amara, Yadiel's sister, approached, her bright smile ill-matched with the tension in the air. "Ah, there you are, my dynamic duo. You two are the talk of the evening," she teased, her warm tone cutting through the lingering weight of unspoken conflict. Beatrix forced a smile, wishing to escape the spotlight like a chameleon. "We were just discussing strategy of sorts," she responded coyly, hoping to deflect. Amara raised an eyebrow. Strategy? Is that what we're calling it now? Her laughter rang out, but her eyes glimmered with scrutiny. Careful, or you might stir up something more dangerous. At that moment, laughter erupted from the far side of the room. Yadiel's focus snapped back to the bickering group, noticing the tension simmering between two rival families engaged in a heated wager. Trouble's brewing, he murmured, and just as he donned his authoritative persona, the room erupted in cheers and fervid gesturing. Indeed, Beatrix said, a frown on her face as she watched the unfolding chaos. And it seems everyone is too blind to see that we're not just players. We're pieces on a board with knives drawn. That doesn't mean we can't have our fun, right? Yadiel replied with a smirk, trying to lighten the mood as the corners of his lips curled devilishly, hinting at the tension they both felt. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Besides, isn't this thrilling? The moment was electric, and failing to suppress a smile, Beatrix found herself leaning into him, a magnetic pull she couldn't quite resist. Thrilling, more like reckless. But her voice was teasing, filled with warmth, even as her heart raced with the thrill of being so close to him. I live for recklessness, he replied, eyes glimmering with defiance and mischief. Just then, an argument flared up nearby, drawing their attention once more. Shouts filled the air, and a glass shattered to the floor. The atmosphere shifted, charged with rising tension. Look at them, Amara said, rolling her eyes. The show's always better than the ball itself. No, Beatrix said firmly, her gaze unwavering. This evening isn't just a distraction. We're caught in the tide of something larger, if we don't act. Yadiel's laughter cut her off unexpectedly, his amusement ringing through the trapped tension. A storm, perhaps, or maybe a pleasant breeze. But you, he added softly, his expression sobering as he met her eyes, are anything but expendable, Beatrix. Something shifted then, a vulnerability hanging thick in the air, two souls laid bare amid the chaos. I won't abandon you, she whispered, a taut promise, the weight of their unspoken bond curling around them. Finally, their eyes locked, understanding passing like a spark, and with it came a shared breath. Neither feared the rise of darker tides anymore. Then let's make it through this night, Beatrix replied confidently, a smirk crossing her lips. Together. They straightened, ready to face whatever might come next, the bond between them growing stronger, electric, and maddeningly alive. The orchestra swelled, and as the revelry continued around them, so did the anticipation of what lay just beyond the horizon. Scene 90, a night of revelations. The cool night air wrapped around Yadiel Sinclair like a cloak, each gust carrying whispers of the vibrant life hidden beneath the surface. He stood at the edge of the sprawling terrace, the twinkling stars stretching out like a sea of secrets. The soft sound of laughter floated up from the garden party below, the distant flickering of candles illuminating faces painted with intrigue and ambition. But in this moment, Yadiel felt the weight of the world pressing down on his chest, a tangible reminder of the clock ticking ominously against him. Beatrix Caldwell appeared at his side, her silhouette framed by the moonlight, her hair cascading in dark waves that danced gently with the breeze. She wore a tailored suit that accentuated her elegance, a perfect disguise for the woman who had bravely infiltrated his world. Underneath her confident exterior, Yadiel sensed an electric tension, a shared understanding that simmered just below their banter. Out here plotting your next move, she teased, a playful lilt to her voice. Or preparing for potential chaos, Yadiel replied, his gaze shifting from the stars to her. This life has a way of collapsing at the worst moments. Perhaps it's the universe's reminder that not everything can be controlled, Beatrix countered, stepping closer until the warmth radiating from her almost chased away the chill. Silence settled between them, thick with unspoken truths, as Beatrix's eyes flickered to the dark corners of the garden, where shadows stretched like hidden threats. You carry a heavy burden, don't you? She murmured, the sincerity in her tone palpable. Yadiel's heart quickened as he turned, his gaze locking with hers. You have no idea, he said softly, the confession hanging in the air like an uninvited guest. But you're here now, in this moment. Yes? Beatrix leaned in slightly, catching the tremor in his voice with her own breathing. He felt vulnerable, exposed under the brilliance of her presence, as if she could see through the facade he meticulously crafted. I don't know if I can afford to let anyone this close, especially not you. Beatrix shifted slightly, her expression resolute despite the fear that sparked in her eyes. We're already entangled, whether you want to admit it or not. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Her voice was steady, yet he could sense the slight tremor of her bravado. The atmosphere crackled around them as they stood on the precipice of something profound. With every lingering glance and hesitant breath, Yadiel felt a pull, the magnetic force of two worlds colliding. The stars above seemed to twinkle in encouragement, urging them toward an unveiling. I'm not what you think I am, Beatrix, Yadiel said, the weight of his secret pressing on him like a heavy shroud. There are things about me that could put you in danger. Danger is my middle name, she quipped lightly, attempting to dissolve the tension, but her eyes revealed the tremor in her own resolve. Your name might need an adjustment then, he smirked, attempting to lighten the mood, but the laughter felt heavy. Their shared glances fell into silence again, each heartbeat resonant with the unsaid, the truths they both feared to voice. The wind swirled around them, picking up a few fallen petals from a nearby flower, swirling them like a dance of fate. Beatrix inhaled sharply, the delicate scent of jasmine strong in the air, intertwining with the earthy musk of the garden's damp soil. Yadiel, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, what if we had a different destiny, one that hasn't been written yet? In response, he stepped forward, bridging the invisible divide that loomed between them. The heat from her body radiated against him, bringing clarity amidst the chaos swirling in his mind. He was a man on the edge, yet here she was, steadying him with her presence. Perhaps it's too late for me, he said regretfully, a surrender echoing in his confession. Or just beginning, she offered, her breath brushing against his cheek. Instinctively, Yadiel reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers grazing the smooth skin of her neck, a spark of electricity igniting between them. Time seemed to halt as they stood breathless, the world around dissolving. Every unspoken word hung heavy, suffocating in the weight of their truths. Their lips met slowly, a collision of longing and vulnerability, a kiss that started tentative, then morphed into something urgent, intoxicating. It was a revelation beyond the physical, an unraveling of hidden fears and desires. In that moment, everything faded, the danger, the betrayals, the looming shadows of the past. As they drew apart, their foreheads rested together, eyes closed in shared understanding. Yadiel's voice broke the quietude. Then let's write it together, he breathed, his heart racing with the possibilities illuminated in her gaze. Scene 91, the veil of deceit. The rain fell like whispered secrets, a soft patter against the cobblestones that glistened with slick, fleeting reflections of gaslight flickering through the gloom. Beatrix Caldwell stood at the window of her modest chamber, her heart racing not just with the expectation of her next meeting with Yadiel Sinclair, but with a profound awareness of the storm brewing beyond the glass. It mirrored the turmoil rising within her, a whirlwind of doubt and desire, ambition and fear. Last night's masquerade ball felt like both a dream and a nightmare, an intoxicating reminder of how deeply entwined their lives had become. She had been so sure of herself, hidden behind the mask of her male persona, her disguise fortifying her courage. Yet with every encounter with Yadiel, she felt the layers peeling away, exposing her vulnerability. What if her truth shattered the carefully constructed illusions around them? Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Yadiel entered, water clinging to his tailored coat, droplets tracing paths down his chiseled frame. The heat of his presence warmed the room in stark contrast to the chill outside. Beatrix turned to face him, her breath catching at the sight. Despite the disarray of the storm, he radiated a fierce intensity that turned her uncertainties into a fluttering anticipation. Needed to see you, he said, shaking his hair free of raindrops that fell like diamonds at his feet, his voice an enticing blend of encouragement and urgency. If you wanted to see me, surely there was a drier way, Beatrix replied with a playful smirk, stepping closer. Her voice held a teasing lightness. It was a necessary counterbalance to the weight of the world that threatened to crush them both. Ah, but where's the fun in that? He quipped, his dark eyes glinting as he approached. He reached out, running his fingers through her hair, pushing a damp lock behind her ear. The intimacy of the gesture sent warmth flooding through her, sparking an electric current that crackled between them. Fun or folly, she countered, her heart racing. She knew better than to carry her heart out in the open, not in a world where devotion could translate into danger. Folly requires someone to be foolish. His voice dropped an octave, the playful banter morphing into something heavier, more profound. His gaze bore into hers. I'm prepared to be foolish if it means I get to keep you. Beatrix's breath hitched. The confession danced between them, charged with unspoken emotions and fears. You shouldn't risk everything for me. You have a world, Yadiel. Power, family. A world filled with nothing but shadows and threat, he interrupted, his frustration surfacing like a tempest. What good are titles if I can't build something real? She saw the flicker of vulnerability in his dark eyes, and the air thickened with the weight of their unfulfilled desires. We're not just risking our futures. There are lives at stake. Every moment spent pretending is a moment wasted, he said, his words fierce yet soothing, much like the rain against the window. Let's stop playing these games, Beatrix. Let's be real with one another. The storm outside crescendoed, a rumble too resonant to ignore. It echoed the clash between their realities, a moment suspended in time. In that heartbeat, she felt the full force of her fears of losing him, of exposing him, and yet she stepped closer, their body heat virtually igniting the chilly air that surrounded them. Why do you care so much? She challenged softly, her voice barely above a whisper, yearning for the truth of their bond. Because it's you, Beatrix, he breathed, the you lingering like a prayer on his lips. You might be the only thing I have that makes anything worthwhile. As they edged nearer, the rain continued its symphony, a backdrop to a moment charged with tension. Their lips were mere inches apart when the crack of thunder erupted, a sharp bellow that shook the very foundations of reality. Yadiel's hand brushed against her cheek, thumb tracing the contours as if he were memorizing every detail of her face. Together, we face the storm, he murmured, drawing her into the intimacy of that promise. In that instant, the boundaries of fear began to dissolve like sugar in water, leaving a sweetness that entangled their fates in a tantalizing embrace. Just as their lips hovered, the tension became palpable, laden with unspoken secrets. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault, but inside, a different tempest brewed, one of passion, hope, and the thrill of new beginnings amid a world designed to tear them apart. With a fierce determination, Yadiel whispered, "Let the world come crashing down. I won't let you go." Scene 92, Love in the Balance. The air within the dimly lit parlor of the Sinclair residence felt taut, stifling even, as the flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows against the velvet drapes. Yadiel Sinclair leaned against the bar, a glass of amber whiskey cradled in his hand. It was the kind of drink that warmed the insides, yet tonight it barely grazed his throat. He faced the vast window, where the city sprawled beneath him, a constellation of flickering lights in a realm he controlled yet felt increasingly estranged from. Outside, a storm brewed, churning winds rattling the glass, echoing the tempest in his own heart. Beatrix Caldwell entered quietly, her footsteps barely echoing on the polished marble floor. Dressed as a gentleman, she wore a high-collared coat, the fabric crisp and tailored, yet so out of place amid the opulence of the room. The familiarity of her appearance did little to mask the oasis of uncertainty looming between them. She approached Yadiel, the sharpness of her green eyes softened by concern. "Yadiel," she began, her voice steady yet laced with hesitation. "We need to talk." "About what? Your charming little escapades as a man?" He shot back, the sarcasm cloaking his true feelings, though it did little to mask the worry deep within his chest. "About us. About this, whatever this is." Her hands flew to her sides, exasperated. Behind her bravado, Beatrix trembled, her resolve wavering under the weight of his cold disapproval. "I can't pretend anymore, not in a game this dangerous." "Then you should have thought of that before you tangled yourself in my world," Yadiel replied, his expression dark, eyes glinting dangerously beneath the shadows of his lashes. The unyielding tension snapped like a taut string, and in a heartbeat, they were lost in a clamor of raised voices. "I knew what I was getting into," she argued, her voice rising, embers of defiance igniting her tone. Every brush of a hand, every stolen moment, it has meant something. Can't you see that? Yadiel turned to face her fully, temper boiling in the poorly concealed pain behind his eyes. Feelings don't matter on the battlefield, Beatrix. You're playing a dangerous game. And what about your secrets? She snapped back, fists balling at her sides. How many lives do they threaten, Yadiel? This isn't just about you. At that moment, something in him broke, a vulnerability spilling forth he had hidden from even himself. I am not afraid for myself, he whispered, each word a knife to his heart. This life has its cost, and I, the man you think you know, I am already paying it in ways you cannot imagine. A hushed silence fell between them, the weight of unspoken fears filling the space. Beatrix stepped closer, searching his eyes, seeking the soul behind the mask of power and bravado. Then let me help you bear it, she urged, her voice softening, the storm outside now more distant, almost a whisper. Let me be your ally. In that heartbeat, like the pause just before a single note of music strikes, they stood united, two beating hearts against the chaos. Their fingers grazed, igniting a familiar spark that neither could resist. Yadiel finally dropped his defenses, closing the distance between them. You don't know what you're asking of me. Perhaps not. Her breath hitched as he leaned in, their faces inches apart, their shared warmth flaring, drawing them closer still. But I do know that when you're around, I feel more alive than I've ever felt. You're the one who shows me my worth. He captured her gaze, the storm of power and vulnerability swirling within his hazel depths, and for a brief moment, a world devoid of their secrets unfolded between them, where only love reigned. What if we lose? He asked finally, the raw honesty of the question reverberating through the air. Then she brushed her lips against his in a kiss that was both electric and tender, a surge of resolve grounding them against the temptation of fear. Pulling back slightly, Beatrix whispered, Then we fight together. Whatever comes, we take it on. In that fragile moment, surrounded by the winds of doubt, clarity blossomed. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the walls of the Sinclair estate, a promise lingered in the air, one of fierce love, forged in the fires of chaos and uncertainty. They stood entwined, on the precipice of all that they had feared, ready to embrace the burdens that their hearts had chosen. Together, then, Yadiel said softly, the tension now turning sweet as a familiar melody played just outside the walls of their tempestuous world. The weight of their love was ignited resilient, indefatigable, in the crucible of their storm. Scene 93. Chasing Shadows. Beatrix Caldwell leaned against the cool stone wall of Yadiel Sinclair's private study, her fingers deftly folding the edge of a parchment, her mind racing as fast as her heart. The flicker of candlelight cast playful shadows across the ornate patterns of the room, a stark contrast to the weight pressing on her chest. She glanced over the top of the parchment to watch Yadiel sift through his collection of rare maps with an unsettling focus, his brow furrowed in concentration. He had a way of making even the simplest tasks appear monumental. Are you sure this is wise? She asked, the tremor in her voice barely disguised by her casual tone. Yadiel spun around, his dark eyes locking onto hers, fierce and demanding. Do you have a better plan? The blunt edge of his response cut through the ambient tension. No, but, Beatrix paused, her mind racing through the implications of their forthcoming mission. Rushing into the lion's den of your enemies isn't always brilliant. A simple reconnaissance mission, he countered, his voice laced with an intensity that mirrored the flickering shadows around them. But if you can't keep up, I won't hesitate to leave you behind. The challenge hung in the air, electric and undeniable. She bristled under his words, striding forward, tilting her head to meet his gaze defiantly. You think leaving me behind is a threat? It's the truth. Her voice was rising slightly, a battle she didn't want to engage in but felt tightly wound to bring to fruition. A corner of Yadiel's mouth twitched, teasing the air with a smirk as he leaned against the desk, brushing a fingertip across an intricate map. You're too attached to your illusions to see the truth, Beatrix. You underestimate the danger lurking in those shadows. Maybe you underestimate what I'm capable of, Beatrix shot back, fire in her words, though her heart fluttered with the realization that she was indeed scared. Yadiel stepped closer, their breath mingling in the silent space. Tell me you aren't afraid, he hissed between clenched teeth, challenging her vulnerable facade. "Tell me you don't care," Beatrix replied, sharp as daggers, her defiance feigning strength as her heart quivered beneath the surface. Silence seeped into the fabric of the moment as they stood in the tension, their defenses flickering like candle flames. It was a charged silence, both of them aware they stood on the precipice of something far deeper than the argument itself. The danger ahead loomed heavily, yet the connection that sparked between them held them captive. She didn't expect the sudden flash of vulnerability that crossed Yadiel's face. "I've lost enough people in my life. I can't." His voice dropped, the rawness of his words slipping through the chiseled mask he wore. The testimony of his sentiment cracked her defenses. Beatrix inhaled sharply, stepping closer, the space between them charged with untapped emotion. "You're not losing me." She reached out, her fingers brushing against his wrist, a touch that ignited the air around them. "I won't let you." "Your determination is admirable, Beatrix," Yadiel murmured, his gaze softening as he regarded her. "But love alone doesn't keep you safe in a world like this." She frowned slightly, the honesty of his statement striking a chord. "And neither does isolation, Yadiel." A pause hovered as they regarded each other, two souls dancing on the edge of fear and longing. Slowly, Yadiel placed a hand over hers, grounding both of them in the moment, a small act that carried colossal weight. "I need you to understand how dangerous this gets." "Just like a silken ribbon, you make everything seem elegant," she teased, but their laughter felt too fragile to hold. Yadiel waved a dismissive hand. "A ribbon gets cut. The trick is weaving what remains into something beautiful." "To what end?" Beatrix replied, her voice barely a whisper yet laced with defiance. "To savagely fight for what we love," he said, pride swelling just beneath the surface. Without a second thought, he slid his fingers through her hair, his vibrant energy igniting her spirit. Their gazes locked, each heartbeat echoing anticipation. And suddenly the laughter, the bickering, all of it was forgotten as a charged silence enveloped them, holding space for the truth of their connection. "Let's see if that beautiful tapestry remains intact tomorrow," Yadiel promised softly, a challenge aflame in his depths. "Just remember, I'm by your side, even in the dark," she replied with a spark of mischief, confidence rising in her voice. As shadows danced around them, it felt like a seminal moment, heavy with potential, yet undeniable vulnerability. They were bound together by more than a cloak and dagger. They were threading the delicate strands of trust through a tapestry of uncertainty. Neither spoke as they withdrew from that charged moment, fully knowing the dangers that lurked ahead, a world of shadows chasing them into the unknown. Scene 94, Banners of War. The air in Yadiel Sinclair's dimly lit study was heavy with the scent of rich leather and faintly smoking incense. The flickering shadows on the walls, a tangible reminder of the factions gathering outside. A low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance, promising a storm that mirrored the tension brewing in the heart of the city. The polished mahogany desk, normally strewn with intricate maps and ledgers, today held only a single, unadorned wooden box, its surface worn smooth by time and use. Beatrix Caldwell, clad in a fitted waistcoat and trousers that concealed her identity, moved to the desk, her fingers trailing over the box's edges. "What's inside?" she asked, her voice a gentle challenge, masking the quickening of her breath. Yadiel leaned against the wall, arms crossed, studying her with a mix of admiration and wariness. "Everything I've built is at stake, Beatrix. More than just alliances, my very life," he replied evenly, though his heartbeat quickened. She looked up, sensing the unspoken weight lingering between them, a current both electrifying and perilous. In a swift motion, Beatrix pushed the box toward Yadiel. "Then let's decide what we're doing with it," she said, her eyes glinting, muscles tensed as if bracing for an unseen attack. "All of it." Silence draped between them, thick and pulsating. Outside, the clatter of distant boots and the bark of commands rippled through the air, intensifying the urgency of their fragile alliance. He straightened, finally stepping into her space, the heat radiating from his body almost overwhelming. "You don't understand the implications." "Try me," Beatrix challenged, lifting a brow. The tension hung between them like a drawn bowstring. Yadiel's gaze flickered to the door, then back to her, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "You could be killed if you wear that disguise too long. It's dangerous." A laugh escaped her, sharp yet tinged with uncertainty. Oh, but it's more dangerous to be who you are, isn't it? Underneath all that power, you are like this box hidden away. He inhaled sharply, as if her words struck a chord in the depths of his guarded heart. What do you want, Beatrix? The question hung between them, heavy yet inviting, wrapped in layers of unspooled emotion. I want to be free, she replied, her voice a daring whisper, stepping forward so the space separating them blurred. Free from the shackles of societal expectations and all of this. I want to be. She paused, searching his dark eyes for understanding, feeling the magnetic pull of his presence. Desirable? Yadiel offered, the corner of his lips twitching as if fighting a grin. Defiant? Yes, she breathed, emboldened by his teasing candor. And I want. The words fell into the silence, a delicate thread stretching between their hearts, laden with unsaid promises. He closed the distance, their breaths mingling in the dim space. As if every filter had shattered, the world outside faded. And what if it all comes crashing down? He asked, his voice low and rich like velvet. Then we stand and face it together, she replied fiercely, taking a slight step closer, drawn by the gravity of his being. The space between them felt charged, a pulse of electricity that silenced their surroundings. Yadiel's hand brushed against her arm, the mere touch igniting her skin like fire. I never thought I would find something worth standing for. His eyes softened, vulnerability flickering momentarily behind the steel facade. In that shared breath, the weight of the outside world slipped away. She could see the fighter, the strategist, the man hidden beneath the silence, and it made her heart race. The air was thick with longing and unshakable resolve as they neared until their foreheads touched, both surrendering to the pull of attraction. Your trouble, Yadiel murmured, his lips almost brushing against hers, tension coiling tight. Complicated trouble, Beatrix replied, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And suddenly, it was there, a kiss that ignited like a spark in the dark, tender yet fierce, a swirl of all that lay unspoken between them. Time stilled, wrapping around them like a cocoon. The throne of their facades fell away. Outside, the storm rumbled on, but here, in their world of shadows and uncertain futures, they existed in possibility, if only for a moment. Scene 95. An unexpected refuge. The moon hung low over a hidden alcove in the city, a secret garden seldom disturbed by the frenetic pulse of nightlife. Dust motes danced in the silvery light, illuminating the fragile blooms of night jasmine that clung to the weathered walls, their fragrance blending with the scent of damp earth and antiquity. Beatrix Caldwell stood amidst the tender chaos of color and shadow, her heart still racing from the skirmish they had escaped. The rustling leaves whispered encouragement, as if the universe conspired to grant her this moment, a breath of sanctuary in a world rife with danger. Yadiel Sinclair leaned against the aged stone, his dark silhouette contrasting starkly with the brilliance of the blooms. He watched Beatrix with an intensity that stirred a tempest of unease within him. The scars of battle matted on his skin contradicted the delicate beauty of their surroundings. You're extraordinary, you know, he mused, breaking the silence, his voice low and gravelly, laced with a hint of something vulnerable. Beatrix turned, her green eyes reflecting the soft glow of the moonlight, searching his face for meaning beyond his words. Extraordinary? Hardly. I'm just wearing a rather convincing disguise. She chuckled, though the sound was thin. The mask she wore, the one that rendered her invisible in a world that sought to confine her, had become both a shield and a shackle. His gaze hardened, smoldering like embers from a fire long extinguished, yet ready to blaze anew. It's not the costume, but the person beneath it, Beatrix. No one else could wield a blade as skillfully as you, or navigate the madness of this world with such grace. She could feel the weight of his words catch in the space between them, grazing her heart like a feather. Grace, I'm a danger to myself and others, Yadiel. Her voice trembled slightly, laced with undeniable tension. A smile flickered briefly on his lips, a rare and unexpected break in his stoic demeanor. You're a force to be reckoned with, whether you admit it or not, just like the night jasmine, delicate yet fierce. In that moment, he stepped closer, the distance narrowing, tensions shifting in the air. The sudden intimacy between them swelled with unspoken emotion, swirling with the scent of jasmine and musk, and the vulnerability that lay beneath their words broke the ice between their guarded hearts. What if everything was different? Beatrix whispered, her pulse quickening, emboldened by the heady atmosphere. What if we could drop our masks just for one night? Yadiel searched her gaze, his own walls beginning to crack. What's stopping us? A playful grin broke through her tension as she tilted her head in defiance. 1,000 little lies, a crime family, and the fact that you're not exactly the law-abiding type. His laughter rolled out spontaneously, rich and deep, an unexpected balm to her turmoil. Neither are you, darling. She took a breath, willfully sinking into the moment, running her fingers across one of the blooms as if accepting a challenge. If I'm extraordinary in your eyes, what does that make you, the mightiest among us all? The damnedest fool, he replied, a glimmer of laughter in his gaze before a shadow flitted across it, serious once more. But I can be brave for this, for us. The gravity of his words placed a veneer of tension in the fragrant air. The pulsation of the night seemed to whisper a secret, urging them closer. She looked up at him, heart hammering against her ribs, and in a daring move wrapped her fingers around his wrist, pulling him down to her level. It was a moment suspended in time, revealing all that lay unspoken between them. The night enveloped them, cocooning their breaths as their foreheads nearly touched, each lost in the depths of the other's eyes. Whatever happens next, Yadiel murmured, I want to. Shh! Beatrix interrupted, her breath catching as she closed that final, fragile distance. Her lips brushed against his, a whisper of warmth connecting their worlds, igniting a fire that absorbed all their fears and doubts. As they parted, just a sliver of space needed for breath, she saw the universe shift in his eyes. You're right, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Let's be reckless. Just for tonight. Together, they stood amid the blooms, ensnared by passion, wrapped in a moment that felt both daring and serene, like a brief dappled light in the shadows of their tumultuous lives. Scene 96, Rising Tensions. The dim light of the moon filtered through the heavy drapes of Yadiel Sinclair's study, casting intricate silhouettes that danced upon the richly adorned carpet.